Hello, fellow truth seekers. This is Doug coming to you on this here Shabbat. Wanted to come on and apologize for not having been on here or not saying anything for the last 2 months, I guess. I'll be honest with you. One, I've been really busy, and I'm tired. So on the Sabbath I've just been resting. The other is I've kind of been in a lull, just not led to say anything. I felt kind of led to come on here today to at least let you know I'm still alive, and I'm not making an excuse. I'm just giving you an explanation for why I hadn't been on here. One, like I say, I've been working on that shop out there, trying to get it up and going, and and then other stuff. We just got a lot going on, and the truck hit our building out here and tore the roof up back there, and a Dollar General truck, and having to deal with that, and this building, it's got a gutter out front out there over the garage that's about to come down. One end of it over there is rotted out, and it's got to be repaired. Well, the whole thing's got to be taken down in order to do it, and of course at the time I didn't have a ladder to get up there. I got a ladder now, but I got it, and then I got somebody that's going to help me do it. A guy I'm looking at maybe partnering up with. He's a building contractor, and he's a master carpenter. And he needs somewhere that he can have a table saw set up and all that, because he does custom stuff and all that. Well, if we get this cleared out in here to where I got the room opened up, then he'll have a place where he can set a table saw up in there and do his thing. We work together, and if he can send me work and I can send him work and that kind of stuff. The other thing is I've been this awakening, this realization about being in Little Season. It's really been something that I have been spending a lot of time meditating about, thinking about, praying about. And because you got to realize that growing up in if you've never grown up in any kind of religion, any kind of Christianity or anything, it would be easier to take it in. But when you grew up, from the time you were, could go to the nursery at a church, and you've been in one pretty much all your life, and Protestant, denominational, dispensational Christianity, and you've been indoctrinated with that. But then, beginning in the late 90s, I began to, because back then I began to pray to know the truth. Just something was driving me, the Ruach, to want to know the truth, no matter what. No matter what it done to my psyche, no matter what it done to my, paradigm. And of course, the old saying is, be careful what you ask for, you might get it. Well, beginning in the late 90s, it started happening. I found out, about the Sabbath, about the holidays, being pagan, and Christmas and Easter and Halloween and Thanksgiving and all that stuff. I started getting away from all that, quit doing it. And of course I took a lot of flack for it, from family and all that. Oh, you're just a Scrooge, and all that, and no, it had nothing to do with that. I just began to say, well, I'll get you something when you don't expect it and give it to you as a gift, and it'll have more meaning, and it won't be celebrating this pagan stuff. Now, I haven't really kept the feast like I should. But there's no command for us to keep the feast. The command is for us to keep the Sabbath. And so, the command to keep the feast to the Hebrew people, yeah, they were commanded to keep it because it was the Hamoedim. It was appointed times. It was to teach them about the events that were going to take place leading up to the coming of the Messiah and the tribulation and the millennial kingdom and all of that. All of that, those Hamoedim, those 7 appointed times, led up to that. And the 70th week of Daniel was fulfilled in Yahushua. He was cut off after 3.5 years, which is what it says in Daniel. And because when he came, that was the 69th week. And when he was cut off after 3.5 years, that was the first half of the tribulation, the last 7 years. And there is no 7-year tribulation. It was just 7 years. And the last 3.5 of it is tribulation, great tribulation. Because even leading up to that, the Christians were being persecuted, the Jews were being persecuted. There was just persecution among those groups early on. I mean, from the time of Yahushua came, he said he didn't come to bring peace, but to bring division, and that's exactly what he did. And he brought it. He brought division, and the Romans, of course, under Nero. When you look at Daniel and Revelation, the description, the 7 heads and the 10 horns, that was Rome. And the harlot riding the beast was Israel. That's who Israel was the harlot. I mean, look at what it says in Hosea and Isaiah and Ezekiel and Jeremiah. They were harlots. They kept going after false gods. They were married to Yahushua, or to Yahuwah, Elohim. It was like a marriage relationship. And they kept whoring around, going after these false gods, which was committing adultery, the harlot. And he finally said, that's it. And 70 AD, that was the end of them. That was the end of Israel. The physical nation of Israel, that was the end of it. Spiritual Israel, yes, it still exists. But these people that claim they're Jews and all now, they're not. They're Ashkenazis. They admit they're Ashkenazis, and I've explained on here about going to Genesis chapter 10 and 11 and looking at the table of nations and see who is descended from who. The Ashkenaz was descended from Japheth. Abraham was descended from Shem. 2 totally different bloodlines. And so they are the synagogue of Satan, and they have. It even tells you there that they will, when it talks about the sin of Ham against Noah, where he looked upon his father's nakedness. When it talks about that and how Canaan was cursed for it, it says that Ham shall be a servant to Shem and Japheth, and that Japheth shall dwell in the tents of Shem. Well, Israel would be the tents of Shem, wouldn't it? So they're dwelling there now. And the original Hebrew people, they ceased to exist. You were either saved out of great tribulation. It says that they will, it says that he will not receive them until they say, blessed is he who comes in the name of Yahuwah. And some of them were, some of them fled, because, they remembered what Yahushua had told them in Matthew chapter 24. When you see these things begin to happen, these armies surrounding Jerusalem, flee to the hills and pray that it be not in winter and that you be, nursing children, or that it's on the Sabbath. And so some of them did flee into Egypt and places like that to get away from the Romans, because they were going to destroy Israel and destroy the temple and Jerusalem, and they did. And it started with Nero. And he was the Antichrist. His name was 666 in their gematria. And but see, we've been, again, that's how Hasatan works. It's like I said in the video I did about what would you do if you were bound for 1,000 years? If you were Satan, you're bound for 1,000 years, what would you do? Well, you plan out what you were going to do, and that would be, one of the primary ways to deceive people is through religion. But he would also have to eliminate the millennial kingdom and the tribulation and all that stuff and make it so that it never happened. And convince people that it's yet to happen. And even set up scenarios that appear to be like that. I mean, you'd have to, in order for people to buy into it, they'd have to see events happening that, that mimic what actually did happen. And so, and of course, it is going to be like a tribulation type thing, but it's going to be different, but it is described in Revelation, but in the later parts of Revelation, and Nero did cause people to have a mark. If you went into any Roman city, you had to get marked before you went in. And otherwise you couldn't buy or sell nothing. And you had to burn incense and all that stuff to Saturn. Saturn's just an anagram for Satan. And so and this spirit of Antichrist that John talks about in the first epistle of John, it had always existed. Going back to Adam, I mean, it was already here. The spirit of Lucifer. And so, and it may even be that it was the result of what happened before Adam, the destruction that happened to the world before, the old world. The scripture says the old world which perished. And it wasn't talking about the world of Noah, because the world of Noah did not perish. The people perished, but the world didn't. But if you read what it says there in verse 2 of Genesis, tohu vovohu, that means desolate. And in Isaiah, he says he didn't create the world to be tohu vovohu, that it was created to teem with life. So something happened. There was a destruction, and the world was water. There was no land. The Spirit moved upon the water, and the land appeared. So, the Ruach moved upon the water, and the dry land appeared. That world perished. So there was only water. And it was destroyed by a flood too. That's the reason when he told Noah that he would never again destroy the world with water. He'd already done it before. And I believe that Satan was the ruler of this world at that time. Hasatan. The Satan. Until he rebelled. And I think it's in Jeremiah maybe, where it talks about it. It talks about how he was lifted up. He was lifted up by pride, and it talks about that. But and like I said before, the description of Lucifer in Ezekiel and the description in Isaiah of Satan are different. They're different descriptions, describing two different entities. And so, this is a lot of stuff to take in. And again, I've been studying scripture pretty much all my life, but even now I'm beginning to realize that even the King James is flawed. There in Revelation 20, where it talks about the dead living again. This is the second resurrection. Well, that's mistranslated. That's not really what it says. I can't quote you the words of what it really says, but you got to remember the New Testament was not written in Greek. There was a couple of books that were written in Greek. I think maybe Mark and Luke. Matthew was in Hebrew, and the rest of it was Aramaic. The Hebrew people, they spoke Aramaic. Christ spoke Aramaic. Hebrew had been relegated to a ceremonial language. The ones that really knew it were the priests and stuff. And I think Matthew was a Levite. So he was in the priest tribe. So he would know Hebrew. That's the reason he was able to write Matthew in Hebrew. But they just basically used it when they would read from the Torah and stuff like that, or from the historical books, or from the prophets, or whatever. They would read it in Hebrew then, and the priest and all would communicate in Hebrew. But outside of there, the common people, they either spoke Aramaic or Greek. And it's like whenever they translated Matthew into Greek, they had to translate it from Hebrew into Aramaic, and then from Aramaic into Greek. The Greeks understood Aramaic better than they did Hebrew. Hebrew was a hard language, and the alphabet was not the way that we see it today. That's a concoction of the Ashkenazis. Just like their language now, it's Yiddish. It's not Hebrew. It's a concocted language that was done by Eastern Europeans, Russians and Eastern Europeans, the Germans and these people. They interpreted it into their languages, and they created this language, this Yiddish. That was the result of their translation. And so, that's what they speak. They speak Yiddish. They don't speak Hebrew. That's just a lie, part of their deception. But, and I've had to take in a lot of this myself. I mean, and it's one of these kind of things, once you kind of have your eyes open to it, you begin to see it everywhere. Like the structures and the buildings and stuff. I mean, I see them around here. I mean, when you look at them, they just kind of, they out of place. They just don't look like they belong. Or that the other buildings don't belong. It does, but they don't. I mean, just the architecture of them, the precision with which they're built. And then when you get to thinking about like the Capitol in Washington, and the Capitol here in Charleston, and down in Raleigh, and in Columbia, and and they tell you, oh yeah, these were built, like the Capitol in Washington, they said they began construction on it in 1800, with no cranes, no heavy equipment, no power tools. And then when you go up there and and if you investigate it, you find out that it's got limestone from Pennsylvania, marble from Vermont and New Hampshire, and other materials from further away, when in 1800, I mean, they wasn't, out in the Midwest, supposedly wasn't anybody there but Indians. I mean, maybe some French, few English here and there, explorers, trappers, stuff like that. But yet you're hauling these huge granite and limestone and marble, that weighs tons, and you're hauling it in wagons with horses and mules or whatever from 700, 800, 900 miles away, and you done it in 2 years. I mean, if you look at Wikipedia, that's what they tell you. And then, and they had a contest. They always have a contest to see who's going to build it. And then they build these massive structures in 2 years or 3 years, 4 years, that in reality We couldn't build it today with all the equipment and stuff that we have. We couldn't build it in that time frame. We couldn't do it. Like the Capitol in Washington. And that dome, I mean, you look up in that dome, the geometric patterns and all that stuff in there, how precise it is. I mean, it is like machining kind of precise. Then the timelines. You know, I mean, how things have been moved around, events have been moved from here up to here. Like there in, you know, from the 1st century up to the 9th century. I mean, that guy Gunnar Hansen, he wasn't no Christian. He wasn't a, you know, religious man, probably an atheist, maybe. I don't know, but he figured it out, you know, that it don't hold up. The mainstream archaeological narrative doesn't hold up to scrutiny. When you look at the timeline, it just don't work. And when you know, and I've talked about how preceding, you know, centuries are built on top of preceding, you know, on the former centuries. So relics and artifacts from the 1st century should be under relics and artifacts from the 2nd century. But that's not what they find. They find them all on the same level. From the 1st century to the 9th century. So about 800 years in there that is all the same. The architecture, the pigments, the glass, the pottery, everything is still the same. So you mean to tell me in 800 years, nothing changed? You know, they didn't come up with new designs for buildings and new glass and new pigment colors and, you know, no. Then I've been that guy, that Tartaria Biblical Interpretation or whatever his channel is. I got it. I mean, he still pops up on there. Well, I seen another one of his videos, and he was talking about the timeline. You know how, and of course there in Daniel, I think in Daniel 11 or somewhere along in there 12, it says that he seeks to change times, seasons, laws, and customs. Well, that's what they done. That's what Hasatan done. Is he changed all of that stuff. And anybody that didn't want to go along with it, they offed them. They either got rid of them, or they put them in these insane asylums and took their children and put them in these orphans, these orphan trains and all that stuff, you know. And you know, you had that mud flood, which nobody knows exactly. I mean, I've heard different times. That guy there that does that, he's a young guy. I mean, he, you know, you can tell by his voice he's not that old, but he's pretty smart, pretty astute. He's done a timeline, you know, and he looks at it as a 7,000 year week, of a week of 1,000 years. And it makes sense. I mean, because if you look at the Sabbath, I mean, 7-day Sabbath, I mean, everything's in sevens and stuff, you know, it's a pattern. And so I think all these things are patterned after it. You know, 7 years, the last week of years of Daniel, the 70 weeks of years, you know, 3.5 years the Messiah will be cut off, and not for himself, and then the last 3.5 happened in 70 AD, which he told his disciples it was going to come, and it would be and some of them would still be alive when it happened. Well, you know, all these people thinking, oh yeah, 2,000 years from now, you know, yeah, John's still alive. You know, no, John. Well, he is alive, but I mean, at the time, and that's the reason I've come to the conclusion that the narrative that the book of Revelation was written in 90 AD is wrong. Because the thing that's always made me question it was, why is there no mention of the destruction of Jerusalem in any of the other books? You know, because my understanding is Peter didn't get, you know, he was still around until like 65 AD, 66 AD or something like that. And Paul, I think Paul was killed before then. But, you know, and I'm sure that some of the other ones was still around. But John, if he lived past 70 AD, like they're trying to say, then how come he didn't mention the destruction of Jerusalem and because it wasn't written then. It was written before. It was written in like 65 AD. That was when it was completed. And when you read there in Revelations chapter 1 through 3, he's addressing these churches, and the way he is talking to these churches is like imminent. It has imminency to it. That he is being imminent. That this is getting ready to happen. You know. And we know now from archaeological digs that those churches existed. They were real. But they don't exist now. And that one church, Smyrna, they were being heavily persecuted by the Romans and by the Jews. And you know they're one of only two that he had nothing but good to say about. Philadelphia was the other one. And the other thing that I've come to the conclusion is that they went all over the world. It wasn't just the Near East and the Middle East and Europe. They were going everywhere. South America, North America. They were wherever there were people at, they were going. Because the Native Americans here, they say that when the Europeans showed up, that they already knew this. Even though they didn't have any written language and they didn't have books, they had storytellers. And they told them that we already know this. Well, how did they already know it? Because they come out of the millennial kingdom. That's how they knew it. They knew it, and I mean, they was probably already white people here too. They was probably all races here. And so, you know, that's how I think that these people's known this stuff. But, you know, they just like everybody else, they got corrupted. When Satan was released, this young guy, he seems to think that it was around 1600. And that the little season it's not really little season. It's just a short period of time. And he believes that the year 7000, according to his timeline, is 2030. And I thought about that. How there's all of this stuff, the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, you know, all these groups that are pushing this Agenda 2030, the reset. Are they telling us something? It's like I've said before, I think that there's some kind of unwritten code or law or whatever that they have to tell you what they're doing. And when you look around and you see how they are in a mad rush to build all of these data centers, all these AI systems. I think that is why. Because 2030 is when the Gog Magog thing is going to happen. And according to Revelation 20, they go up and surround the camp of the saints. And then fire comes down out of heaven and consumes them. They don't attack them. They don't make war against them. They don't do anything but get destroyed. There is no battle. They just gather. They surround the camp of the saints and the holy city. And then fire comes down out of heaven and consumes them. And so, and I believe the holy city is the New Jerusalem. And this just just this morning I was just thinking about it, and it occurred to me that the New Jerusalem, the description that it gives of it, I think it's pyramidal, and it is huge. I think that it comes down the magnetic mountain. The magnetic mountain is like a pyramid with a hole like in the center of it that's shaped to come down over the magnetic mountain. And I think from what Enoch describes is there's a throne on that mountain, the mountain of Elohim. And because it says that he will be in the New Jerusalem, him and Yahushua, and they will be the light of it. There will be no need for a sun and a moon, for they will be the light of it. And I believe he will be sitting on that throne inside the city. I mean, because from the description of it there in Revelation, I think it's Revelation 21, it's 1,500 square miles. Or 1,500 miles on the side or whatever. I mean, it's ginormous. And it's already there. But then whenever they go up there to encamp about it and they're destroyed, it goes back up. The earth is burnt off in the heavens. And there's a new earth and new heavens, and then it descends back down. Because Yahushua told his disciples, says, I go away to prepare a place for you, that where I am, you may be also, the New Jerusalem. And that's where they're at right now. And so all this has been, I mean, for me, growing up, like I say, in dispensational, Protestant, denominational Christianity, you know, that's a lot to take in. And I'm always the first to admit whenever I'm wrong about something. If I was wrong about that stuff, I was deceived and misled just like everybody else. You know? I mean, and I just believe that we are that close. That's why all this stuff's coming out now. But what I don't understand is, like about the Amish, I believe they were in it. They came out of it. Because I said that guy, he showed a copy of that book. I wished I'd have got the name of it because I'd like to get a copy of it. But it was written by this guy that became the guy that started the Amish community. And it was from the 1600s. And he said that the millennial kingdom is getting ready to end and Satan is getting ready to be released. And this young guy, he says, you know, that he believes that the 1600s was when he was released. But they was, you know, when he was released, when he first came out, he was preparing everything. He was, you know, finding the people that was going to align with him, people that came out of the millennial kingdom. You know, and we're not resurrected dead. We are descendants from those people that came out of the tribulation, out of the millennial kingdom. The ones who survived the great tribulation. And you can see the destruction all over the world from the great tribulation. It's all, the whole middle third of the earth is covered in deserts and waste. I mean, look on a map. A Mercator map, you know, flat map, look on it and you'll see all of the destruction happened along the equator and north of the equator, where most of the world's population lives. I mean, look here in America, man. I mean, they is a lot of wasteland here. A lot of land is just not hospitable to live on. And over there in, you know, the Sahara Desert, over there in Africa, the Gobi Desert, and then there's a couple of other ones over there. And they're, you know, they find all this vitrified glass and stuff, which is the result of great heat. I mean, intense, great heat. Nuclear. And then you read the writings of Tacitus and Josephus. Josephus was living in the 1st century. He was he became a Roman historian, but he wrote the Wars of the Jews, the Jewish Wars and Antiquities of the Jews, and he talks about seeing these chariots and horses up in the sky. And so does Tacitus, and there's a lot of other mentions of it in other writings and stuff where they saw this stuff going on. And a lot of these so-called 1st century, people or whatever, they didn't exist. Not in the 1st century, they didn't. Again, he changes times, traditions, laws, and customs. And so it had to happen now, because we wouldn't have understood it. I mean, when we read those things, we think reading them in Daniel and all that stuff, we thought we understood all that stuff. But really we didn't. We didn't. Our interpretation was wrong, or our time was wrong. The timing. I think it's more timing than interpretation that's the problem. Changing all the calendars, the Gregorian calendar from the Julian calendar, and and BC and AD and all that, instead of just a continuing time from 0 to whatever. And the one that the Jews purport to have, 5,000, and it's, according to their calendars, 5,925 or 955 or something. I don't know, but that's wrong too. The Hillel calendar, Hillel 2 calendar, it's wrong. We're in like 6995. And and I'm as dumbfounded as anybody. I like I say, I've studied the Bible all my life. I read it every day. I believe the King James is as pretty much as good as any of the translations. I mean, maybe the Geneva might be a little bit better. I don't know. But it's harder to read because it's in Old English, and and of course I'm at that point, man. My eyes are getting bad. I mean, they've been bad. I mean, since I was about 16, I've been wearing glasses, but they really. Sometimes I wonder if I'm going blind, and may yet. But there it is. I mean, again, you can't do nothing but laugh about it. I mean, the beat's crying over it. I'm just thankful that I have been revealed the truth. I prayed for it and I got it. And of course, I'm not perfect by no means. I got a temper. I get frustrated with my woman a lot. I mean, she's a trial. I love her, but she can be a handful, and just fretting all the time. I mean, it just wears on me. That's why I'm up here, because it's peaceful. And nobody fretting and Doug. I mean, every 10 minutes, Doug. I mean, like, I got the answer for everything. I don't. I realize the older I get, the less I know. I mean, this is like with this stuff. I mean, all these years I've studied, I mean, not just the Bible, but I've studied all kinds of commentaries and read all kinds of books and, religious stuff. And, and all I was doing was just digging myself deeper into a hole of deception. and really all it took was just praying, for the truth. And of course, he led me to people, to things, to where I began to find the truth. But it's been a process, and of course, during that period of time, I had to go through some chastisement and stuff. You know, I mean, to refine me. And like some people would say, well, if it's coming, if 2030s, I don't know that to be a fact. I don't know that, and I don't think that guy does either. I don't think anybody does. Only the Father knows that. When it's his timeline and it's his plan, and he'll bring it to its conclusion when he decides to bring it to its conclusion. And he can often put stuff off. I mean, look at the destruction of Nineveh. He put it off for 40 years because Jonah went there and preached to them and told them they was going to be destroyed in 40 days. They didn't repent. And they repented. And the Father put it off. That generation passed away, and then the next generation came along, and then he destroyed Nineveh. But he put it off for 40 years. Well, that can happen if enough people pray and enough people repent. I pray for people to repent. I think, with YouTube and all this, I think that people are just being bombarded with so many different versions and opinions about stuff. That's kind of one reason too. I just kind of backed off. It's like, man, I'm just one little speck in this great big ocean of voices out here, and I don't know it all. I mean, I don't. I'm still discovering truth every day. I mean, that's why I call this channel, Doug Foster Truth Seeker, because Doug is seeking truth, no matter where it leads and no matter what it does to my belief that I've had. The mark of, I guess we just say wisdom, is to recognize when you're wrong and to correct it and accept what is right. I've pretty much everything I've done got to the point where I've took everything that I've believed all my life, and just throwed it in the trash. And just kind of started over from scratch. Because I'm like, man, if I hold on to any of that, it's gonna just confuse everything. I've got to just kind of start from a whole new perspective. That's the past, and it is the dispensational belief of the tribulation and the rapture and the millennial kingdom and all that stuff's in the past. I mean, I've done accepted that. The more I look around and I've read a lot of and seen all these structures. I mean, look like Angkor Wat over there in Cambodia. Here's this little country, Cambodia, a third world little country, and they got the largest temple complex in the world. This place is massive, and it is intricate. And on the door lintels, around the door, it's got dinosaurs on it. So, I mean, and same thing down there in Indonesia. They got that place there that's got all them stupas. They look like bell shaped or like flying saucer kind of shapes all over this temple complex. I mean, it's huge. And and these people want to convince us that these ancient people that were using copper chisels and bone hammers and donkey carts built these. Same thing with these, here, the capital in Washington and the white city up there in Chicago or Chicago that they destroyed. Lied and said they built it in 2 years on swampland, and yet they didn't even have a power tool yet. That was in 1893 when they opened up that exhibition up there. And the first power tool was invented in 1895 by Robert Bosch. It was a drill. And yet that place was lit up like Las Vegas. And they say, oh, Tesla did that. He did it in 6 months. He invented all the light bulbs and all the equipment and all that stuff. No, he didn't. That stuff was already there. He just figured out how to use it. None of that stuff that Tesla was accredited as inventing, he invented. He didn't invent any of it. He reverse engineered it. He was smart. I'm not taking away his, his intelligence. He was smart. But he was already, again, Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing you can dream up or think of that hasn't already been done at some time in the ancient past. And it's in the Aether, the Akashic Record, the Tree of Knowledge of Good and Evil. It's all there to be retrieved. So, and he said he was seeing this stuff. He was getting into these trances or whatever, and he was receiving it. Some people are more sensitive to it than others. Their pineal functions better because it's our pineal gland, the hippocampus and all, that is the communication, the way that we communicate and the way we transmit our information back and forth. You can say it's a very advanced form of Wi-Fi. But, all this kind of stuff that I've discovered, that's been revealed to me, some of it by other people, and some of it just to me. About the Tree of Knowledge of Good and Evil, what it really represented. This magnetic mountain with this aether around it. Looks like a tree. If you stood off from the side and was able to look in and see it, it looked like a tree. Looked like a great big, mountain going up like that. And then around the top of it, a big torus of a fifth state of matter, a liquid gas state of matter. And you can take these people that's took these Nikon P900 and P1000 cameras and they've put them on time lapse again, against the moon, looking at the moon or at some of these planets, and you can see these waves, like water, looks like water waves moving across these, or it's like a refresh, because this is all hologram. It's all a hologram. And for all intents and purposes, that's what it is. It's a simulation. It's not real. And that's why, the real reality, the real is a spiritual thing. It's a spiritual realm, and it's above us. There's levels, and the spiritual realm is up above us, and it's right here. It's all around us. Paul talks about it. These powers and principalities and spiritual wickedness in high places. That they're. It's not just talking about high places like in political, rulers and presidents and people like that. It's talking about in the spiritual hierarchy. There's all these powers. And then when you look in the Table of Nations, each one of these, he tells us he put one of these gods, lowercase e, Elohims, over each of these 70 nations. And then he made a nation for himself, the Hebrew people. And he took them out of the smallest tribe of people in the world, over there in Ur of the Chaldees, which was near Nineveh. Some people say it was south of Babylon, but the scripture says it was Ur of the Chaldees and it was near Nineveh. But he was Assyrian. or related to the Assyrian people. That was Asher. Asher was a descendant of Shem. The Assyrian people, they were descended from Shem. And then when you look at like the Egyptians, the Mitzrayim was descended from Ham. So you can find out who is who. Japheth, the people that come from Japheth, the Russians, the Eastern Europeans, the Caucasians or whatever, the Caucasus people, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Indians, they all descended from Japheth. And you know, Vladimir Putin, when he was being interviewed by Tucker Carlson, he was talking about a lot of that stuff. He was talking about the dissension, how they were descended from Meshach and Magog and Tubal. Yeah, they were all the descendants from Japheth. You know, Gomer, Togarmah, which is in like eastern Turkey. You know, the Caucasus Mountains, the Himalayas. You know, all those people from say the Black Sea over and down. And then the people descended from Ham were the Egyptians, the Africans, the Ethiopians, the African people, and then Shem, you know, the European, the Western European peoples, the Middle Easterners, you know, like the Iranians. Iranians, people think they're Arabs, but they're not. They're not Arabs. Neither are the Iraqis. They're different people, but they're descended from the same bloodlines from Shem, but they're just branched off. And Shem is like the Arabs, because you know Abraham was the father of the Arab people too. You know, like Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the UAE and Chad and you know Libya, which I don't think Libya is I don't think they're not Arab either. You know, that's Put in the Bible. It's Put. I'm not sure. I think they might have been from Ham too. But you know, in Canaan, Canaan, they you know, so you can go and look that up in the Table of Nations and see who's descended from who. And of course, when they took those people and put them where they wanted them at, like the Native American people, they, you know, those people there, I guess they would be maybe descended from Shem. I'm not sure, maybe Japheth, I don't know. But they placed them over here where they wanted them, because they didn't do what he told Noah and his 3 sons to do, to multiply and replenish, you know, go out and repopulate the earth. No, they gathered all up there at Babel and built a city and a big tower and all that stuff, you know, a big device. They were trying to build some kind of device to open up one of them portals. They wanted to go up to heaven, wanted to ascend. That's the spirit of Antichrist. I mean, that's exactly what it says about Lucifer there in Ezekiel 14. It says the same thing. He says, I will ascend. You know, it says, oh, how thou art cast down from heaven. Yeah, because he tried to ascend up to heaven and he got cast right back down. He was earthborn. He was a Nephilim. And he got kicked back down here. And it says he was in Eden and all that stuff. Yeah, he was. I mean, Satan would go into Eden. I mean, even after the Adam and them were kicked out. It's still, you know, it's the Garden of Elohim. But they would go in there and approach him, you know. I mean, you know, it talks about him going up to the third heaven. Up there and, you know, accusing the brethren, you know, I mean, day and night. And they probably switch off. There's 7 Satans. Yeah, they probably one goes up there one time and then another one goes up there, and I mean they just, you know, oh, did you see what he did? Yeah, but he repented. So, you know, and Yahushua was there as our advocate or attorney, or, you know, to intercede for us, or Kohen Haggadah, or high priest, our lofty one. And so he's there to intercede for us and to advocate for us. You know, because they know our weaknesses, that we're weak. And that, we have the potential to be like them, but we have to develop that potential. And we can only do that through his guidance, through the guidance of the Ruach and the indwelling of the Ruach. And the leading of Yahushua. Because he's the one that leads us back to the Father. Right now, we still cannot go directly just on our own directly to the Father. We have to go through Yahushua. He is our intermediary. Just like they went to Yahuwah back in the tabernacle, and it was the high priest that did it. People didn't do it, and it was only the high priest that was allowed to go into the Holy of Holies, and only once a year. And if he wasn't right, he would be killed. If he was, if he had any kind of an abomination or sin or hidden sin or unconfessed sin or whatever, I mean, he would be destroyed. And so, he was an intermediary. And so, and I think that for people who truly want to know the truth, he's revealing it. And I wished I had the opportunity to go and talk with some of them Amish people, some of their elders or whatever, the teachers or whatever. I'd like to find out what they know, if they would come forth and tell me truthfully, because I really believe they do know. They've known all along, but I think that they out of the fear of being destroyed by Hasatan and his minions, they've just kept their mouth shut about it, and just went about living their life, the way that is the way of Elohim. What they believe, they had passed down to them the way that they lived during the millennial kingdom. I mean, they built, and they had railroads, and they had airships and wireless electricity. I mean, they had all these things. They had acoustic healing centers, these big cathedrals and all that stuff that they use for churches over there in Europe now and here. They were not for that purpose. They were not places of worship. The only place that they worshiped at was when they would go up to Jerusalem, which is, I believe, there's a map that they found that it shows Yahushua in the center of the world, and all these kingdoms all over, these castles-like kingdoms, which is where the saints were ruling from, the apostles and the disciples, and the disciples, the apostles, the saints that ruled and reigned with him. That's where all these castles and stuff you see, these star forts and all that stuff you see all over the world, that's where they come from. They built them. And I believe they had the help of angelic beings, Malahim. They came down here and helped them and showed them how. Because I think they're big. I don't think that the angels are, they can appear any way they want to, but I think their real appearance is that they're giants. And they come down here and they can do that stuff with impunity. And because look at some of these buildings over there in Europe, I think it's like over there in Norway or somewhere, or Sweden. There's this building over there, man. I mean, they have their parliament in, and they only use like 4 rooms out of it. That's how massive this building is. So massive that they only need their government, their parliament or whatever, only needs like 4 chambers in this building to run their government. I mean, this building is so massive you could run all of Europe out of it. And yet they want to try to tell you they built this thing in, 1100 AD, yeah, really? and the materials are from way off, man. I mean, some of it, some of the granite and marble and stuff like that's from 1,000 miles away or 800 miles away. And all you got is donkeys and carts and stuff, and you hauled all of it from there? Yeah. No, see, that's how they got all this stuff to places here in the U.S. And these buildings were all over the United States. And when George Washington had his vision of this green-skinned Native American, showed him a vision of a map of the United States, and raindrops were hitting on it, and everywhere it hit, she said it was a city. And there was St. Louis, Cincinnati, Minneapolis, Denver, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, all these cities, these big cities and stuff, they were already there. There were cities already there, structures already there. And they'd go out, on the prairies or somewhere out there, and they'd find this elaborate building out there just sitting there. And they're like, wonder why this building's there. And they'd go over and explore around it and look, and they'd see a couple of rails sticking up out of the dirt. So they'd get gangs of Chinese together, and they started digging it up. And they just follow it to wherever it went. They said there was 250,000 miles of rail here in the United States in the 1800s. When I think Carnegie started with his big steel mills like in the 1880s. So you want to tell me that you built 250,000 miles of rail when you didn't even really have a steel industry? No, it was already here. Same thing with the electric streetcars and stuff. They start out going around in electric streetcars, and then when they break down, they start pulling them around with horses and mules. Because they couldn't figure out how to fix them. And, why I never questioned any of this stuff, I don't know. Just didn't have enough critical thinking, I don't guess. But, and so all this has been a lot to take in. And to dwell on and meditate on and ponder and pray about and, try to put it together into a new picture, a new big picture. Because like I've said before, I'm a big picture kind of person. I can see a little piece and, like a puzzle. I'm pretty good at putting puzzles together. I can take and, fit these pieces together, and I begin to see this big picture, man. Of how Satan deceived us. And what the real truth of the matter really is. And of course, a lot of other people are discovering it too, but the majority of the world is rejecting it. It's, and it's sad, man. It's sad. And I try to tell people now, they just look at you like you got three heads. Or like, oh, come on, man. That's a little far-fetched, like flat earth and a dome and all that stuff. You still got too many people that just can't let it go. And when I really kind of come to the truth about it and accepted it, it didn't bother me one bit. It didn't bother me one bit to accept it. Because it made sense. And I will admit, I had thought about, we're going around 1,000 miles an hour, man. How come we don't get slung off? How come we don't get slung off, Well, the ultimate always answer is gravity. It's gravity, man. And there ain't no such thing. There's no such thing as gravity. It doesn't exist. It's electromagnetism. And you would think somebody with an electrical and electronic background like I would kind of have figured that out. But again, you buy into the science falsely so called, and so obviously during the time of Paul, science was a big thing. I mean, you know, the Romans and the Greeks, I mean, they were big into science and mathematics and architecture and, you know, building and inventing. I mean, you know, the Romans had central heat. It was called a heliopile. They, you know, they burned wood in it, but it was like central ducting up under their floors, you know. And I mean, they, you know, it was heated, man, nice and toasty. And you know, they had a place down there where they put the wood in there like a furnace, a wood furnace, and it was ducted. And the floors, you know, tile floors. I mean, they were heated. Like I say, nice and toasty warm. I mean, they're all over England over there. Them old places. And all them old structures over in England, I mean, they were built by the Romans. I mean, most of them. And London wasn't really called London. It was called something else. I forgot what it was called. Hercunon or something like that. I mean, it was a Roman name. And so, you know, they you know, and over in China, I mean, they were over there too. India, yeah, they were everywhere. We've been lied to about all of it. And they've gone out of their way to hide it. And like all these dates on there that they got like a J or an I or whatever, that was Yahushua or Jesus or Jesus, depending on your language. And they would, you know, it was J 506. The year of Yahushua 506. Or the year of Jesus 506. That's why all them buildings are, you know, the first number is an I or a J. And the money too. They had money, but it was gold and silver. It was real. I mean, because they still function. I mean, everything still functioned pretty much the way it did before the destruction there in Jerusalem, before the tribulation and destruction. People still went on about their lives kind of like they always did, but they were being instructed by and there was no wars, you know, no armies, none of that stuff, you know. I mean, Yahushua ruled with a rod of iron, and his saints and disciples and all, they ruled with him, and they kept people in line. They you know, would settle disputes and all that kind of stuff. That's what they did. They ruled and kept things, you know, and so people were free to be creative and to be able to build and try different things and experience, you know, and they were interacting, you know, I believe they were probably interacting with Malahim, you know, learning from them. I mean, and teaching them about building, and you know, and the people like the German people, I mean, I'm sure they built a lot of that stuff. The Assyrian people, they built a lot of that stuff that we see, them big structures and stuff. And the Romans, you know, the ones that were left, they probably built a lot of that stuff because they had to know how to build big stuff. But they were just, you know, shown better techniques and more accurate, and maybe even how to use machines or stuff that we don't even have yet. You know, using sound and using energy to change the shape of stuff. I mean, you know, because again, the aether, if you could learn how, if you knowed how to trigger it to produce something, I mean, you can make something perfect. You know, perfectly geometrical or whatever, like you see in these domes and stuff. These patterns around there, these resonant patterns. They're so precise. It's just incredible. I mean, you know, to think that somebody done that with you could not do that with hand tools, chisels and hammers and stuff. You couldn't do it. It's impossible. You would have to do it either with molds or with machines. You know, like machine tools, like CNC machines or something that could, you know, make, you know, incredibly accurate patterns and stuff. And even if you use molds, you got to make the molds, and they got to be extremely precise. And they just didn't have that capability. I mean, yeah, the Romans built some really incredible stuff. I mean, they were good. But there's a lot of this stuff that wasn't built. They maybe built it in their style, but they were being instructed and shown how to do these really massive structures. I mean, you know, I don't even think we could build them now. With all the technology and stuff that we have, I still don't think we could build one of these structures. and then now too, all these underground tunnels with trains and rails and all that stuff, all over the place. All the buildings interconnected with these little trams and stuff. They were already there. They were already there. And they say there's a network of thousands of miles, tens of thousands of miles of tunnels and connecting tunnels and chambers and all that stuff all over the world. So, you know, I mean, when you start putting all this stuff together, man, it's incredible. And I don't know, I think it's pretty fascinating, you know. I mean, but it's also incredible how gullible and easily deceived we have been. You know, that we were so spiritually deaf. And I'm sure the Ruach all along has been saying, hey, you're wrong. That's not right. And we just wasn't hearing it. And I'm just as guilty as anybody. But, you know, that's the way of it. You know, I believe that we have things revealed to us when we're ready to receive it. Not before. Not in our time, but in His time. And I think we have to truly have the desire. We have to truly have the desire to know the truth. And accept it regardless of what it does to our preconceived ideas. And so I just wanted to kind of follow up with that. You know, I've really had it on my mind a lot. It's just so much. I mean, so much so fast that it's just been hard to put my hands around it, my mind around it, and I had to just really sit back and just study it, think about it, and that's what I hope y'all do. You know, I'm not trying to come here and say I know it all, man, about it, or am an expert on it, or anything else. I mean, I'm learning it just as, you know, like everybody else. But, you know, dig into it. Dig into it and you know, research and study. See if you come to the same conclusion. Because it really makes sense to me now. I mean, it just all makes sense. It's where a lot of what the Bible said, just with the events and what it was saying and the way things were playing out and all and stuff like that, it just really didn't make sense, a lot of it. But I just took it, you know, that's, you know, you just take it on faith. And now that I understand that this stuff's all happened, now it makes sense. You know what I'm saying? I mean, because I would ask, you know, occasionally, well, why is this seems to have happened already, and oh, no, that ain't happened yet, you know. I mean, so when you're asking the person that's supposed to know, you know, preachers and teachers and theologians and people like that, and then they said, oh yeah, that's not happened yet, you know, and really, I mean, you see evidences and stuff that kind of point to the fact that it did. You know, preterism or whatever, you know, that this stuff's happened. Oh, but they convince you, no, that ain't happened yet, man. That's got to happen later. Yeah, well, you know, and now I realize, yeah, it ain't, you know, it's all done happened. All of it. The only thing that's left to be fulfilled and is being fulfilled right now is Revelation 20 through 22. That's it. I mean, of course, Ezekiel 38 and Daniel 12. I think what I've kind of figured out is that the latter part of these chapters and the latter part of these books are related to the end. Everything before that was related to 70 AD. Tribulation, millennial kingdom, all that. So what one guy said was, it's like we're in the 6th seal. Well, I believe we're in the 7th. I believe we're in the 7th of the last one. And that the seals were, things that were fulfilled up till now, and then those judgments and stuff, they happened back then. The bowls and the vials and all that stuff, candles, sticks and stuff, or trumpets and the vials and stuff. But there you have it. That's where I've been. And I apologize that I hadn't come on here and said, hey, at least I'm alive or whatever in this period of time. I just couldn't do it. Just couldn't. I don't know. I just wasn't motivated or driven to do it. It's like, don't do it. It's like he's the Father. The Ruach is telling me, don't do it. Just rest and stay focused on what you're doing. Because we have to live. I think that we're supposed to work, and of course we're doing all that we can, to try and make it through these times that we're in. It's hard. It's hard on everybody. I feel sorry for so many of these people that are getting laid off and losing their jobs because of AI, and and they're going whole hog on that stuff. I know I've heard several different people, Elon Musk in particular, talking about universal basic income. That people will have to be given something because AI is going to just displace so many people. Because it can do, all these office type jobs and stuff. It can do all that. Writing code, for software, it can do all that. Eventually it'll be, doing law, practicing law or whatever. Medical diagnosis. And monitoring everybody 24/7. And directing militaries. That's their ultimate objective. If you look at the military, there's more and more like these new F-47 planes, which I believe they've already had. I think they had them. Anytime they tell you they're going to do something, they've already had it. These things are going to be flying in wings of these drones. It'd be one F-47 pilot with like 10 or 12 of these pilotless drone planes, and they'll be multi-role planes. They'll be able to do all kinds of stuff like electronic jamming and decoys and shoot rockets and missiles and everything else. And this one pilot, he can either do it himself, direct them to do it, or they can be taken over by AI and they can just do it autonomously. And that's and then obviously the next obvious step is soldiers, robots, or even cyborgs, which I think that's what putting the chip in your forehead, I think that's what that really represents, or the mark in your head. Of course, the Romans did that. They put a mark on your forehead, or they put a mark on the back of your hand, And because you couldn't buy or sell nothing in a Roman city if you didn't have it, and this is a fact. And so again, Satan's going to try and duplicate that again, to make people think that the same things, But there is no the third temple. They're talking about building the third temple. There is no third temple in the Bible. Them building the third temple. When it talks about them building the temple, it's talking about the temple that they already rebuilt, the second temple. Ezra and Nehemiah. And that temple was destroyed. That ended. That system of worship ended in 70 AD. The new covenant. The renewed covenant. Except this time we don't sacrifice animals. We had a sacrifice that was once and for all, Yahushua. And so there's no more need to sacrifice animals and all that stuff. That was done away with. And those ordinances that surrounded that, about 600 of them, that was done away with. But his laws and his statutes and commandments, they don't go away. They stay. And Christ said that. He said he didn't come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. And he told us how to fulfill it. The law of love. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. For in this is all the law and the prophets. So I'm going to end it there. I've kind of went on and on here, kind of droning on from one thing to another, but it's such a huge, huge subject. I want to kind of touch on each aspect of it. And let you make your own mind up and do your own studying and research and see what conclusion you come to. I think you'll come to the same conclusion. But anyway, I love you folks. I hope all of you will be blessed. I hope that you will all have on your armor, Ephesians 6. 5 and 6, you're put on the whole armor of Elohim that you might be able to stand in the evil day, because we're going to need it. Because it's things things are just getting really good. Things are ramping up. But as it says, lift up your head, for your redemption draweth nigh. And it does. And just keep walking in the ways of Elohim, the straight and narrow path that leads to life. Don't turn to the right and don't turn to the left. And so with that, I'm going to close it again. I love you. I hope you all be blessed. And I'll see you again on the next Shabbat if Yahuwah is willing. Take care.